The electric revolution is unfurling right before our eyes. EV ownership is snowballing across the globe. And as the adoption of electric cars continues to grow, so too does the need for proper charging infrastructure. Over the past few years, charging points have been popping up across the UK at an increasing rate. And to date, we now have just over 30,000 public charging devices. And that is soon going to overtake the 66,000 petrol pumps that we currently have here in the UK. A big factor in this rapid expansion is due to the fact that for most charging points, they can be installed almost anywhere as long as there is a connection to the grid. But that itself has become a catalyst to a bigger problem, which is safety, particularly for lone women. An epidemic of femicide and serious violence against women has been a frightening reality over the past few years. Sarah Everard, sisters Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman, Julia James, Ashley Murphy and Sabina Nessa, all women targeted as they were going about their day. Women up and down the country don't feel safe, and EV charging operators have a big part to play in this. Any EV owner that drives long distances will know the issues that crop up with public charge points. Let's say you're down to your last 20 miles, you pull up at your charging point to suddenly realise that either the charge is broken, somebody has just plugged in themselves, or even worse, a petrol diesel car is parked in front of it and your cable can't reach the connector. Add into the fact this might be late at night, you've pulled into some eerie car park and you're a woman on your own, and suddenly this becomes a bit more of a serious issue. So today I'm driving down to Farnham to meet with a lady called Kate Tyrrell. Now she is an EV owner, she's had an electric car for a good few years now, and unfortunately she has experienced the worst of what public charges can bring, but thankfully she's also come up with a solution. So Kate, how did you get an EV in the first place?
So I got an EV about September 2020. It was a company car, it came with the job. Before that, I'd never really thought about driving an electric vehicle, and I certainly felt like it was out of my price range. So I was really excited just to see what it was like.
After having her electric car for a good while, mixed with regular long distance commutes for work, Kate felt she was pretty savvy with her EV way of life. But this journey was different.
By this time, I've got over a year's experience driving the EV. I know that I need to leave 30 to 50 miles additional range to my journey, just in case. So you've got that emergency mileage. And lo and behold, I had to be redirected. So I had to pull over and I was like, right, okay, I need to charge because I'm not gonna make it home. And picked up the first charging station. I pulled up to that parking space. It was just an abandoned car park. There was some lighting, but I very much felt like it wasn't safe. So I pulled up, I plugged in, it wasn't working, and I thought, well, it's fine because there appear to be quite a few other chargers in the area according to my map. Went around the corner to a Lidl car park. Not only am I a young woman on my own, it's nearing midnight, I can't be seen by other road users, and I was starting to panic. I plugged the car in, it was failing to connect with the car. I had to call the customer service helpline. The lady who answered was super professional and absolutely awesome. But by this time I'm an hour away from home. The charger's not working, I'm starting to freak out. So I did the only sensible thing to do, and I burst into tears and started ugly crying.
Unfortunately, the charger couldn't be rebooted, and after another failed attempt at a closed petrol station, Kate was left with minimal range, and although there were other chargers in the area, she didn't want to risk it, so her only safe option was to travel to a grid serve.
The car was on 22 miles and the grid serve was 24 miles away, and I have to get there via the M3. So there's no way at driving 70 miles per hour I'm going to make it. So the only thing I could think to do was to actually whack my hazards on. I was crawling up the hard shoulder of the M3, just shaking, literally terrified and shaking. My phone's dying. I don't know if I'm going to be able to call for help. I'm like out in the middle of nowhere. I did make it, but when I arrived there, it was on zero.
Kate isn't the first to have had a chain of failed charging attempts, leaving her far from home and vulnerable. Presenter Maddie Moat, who presented a beginner's guide series for Fully Charged, tweeted back in August 2020 about her worrisome encounter having to charge at night, sparking off a huge thread of shared experiences. Even Tish, our expert car reviewer, has hit crisis point.
I'm actually laughing at myself. I'm crying. The first charger didn't work. Then I went to Morrison's car park, and the only connection for that, the only way that's working is with a Genie card, which I don't have. And I've got 5 miles, and I really want to go home. I'm 3 hours away from home.
Don't worry, Tish managed to make it home after the last charger, thankfully, was a success. But this is something we seriously need to be addressing. Right now, there is a considerable lack of transparency around maintenance, accessibility, and ultimately safety with our charging infrastructure. And Kate wants to end these nightmare experiences for everybody. So she came up with ChargeSafe.
ChargeSafe is a simple rating system based on the location, the environment, the functionality of the charger itself, and the accessibility. It would give people better visibility on which charger is going to be safe and accessible when they're looking for a charger and they're in a hurry on the road. We're going to let those charge point network operators know what they need to improve and what they're doing really well as well, because they are up against it. There's a lot of infrastructure to deliver in the next 8 years. For the ones that really don't put any budget behind operations and maintenance or take feedback really seriously, I'm hoping that they're going to feel it a little bit more when we start inspecting their units. It's really important that we take care of the legacy units that are already in the ground, but set a standard so that the charge point network operators are able to set best practice moving forward.
It all sounds really promising, but next up, I wanted to see a few of the offending charge points that Kate encountered that night. So we made our way over.
Yeah, this is tucked away. Yeah, so as you can see over here, we've got this alleyway, which I could see was going somewhere, but I couldn't tell who would be coming out. So you can see, literally, you've got a tree over the charge point. The screen on that is absolutely tiny. There's no light anywhere around here. There's a street light way back on the street behind, that's like up that level.
You were completely on your own here as well.
Completely on my own. I've got my phone in my hand, I've got my debit card in my hand, I've got my car keys in my hand, and I'm staring at this tiny screen, trying to figure out why it's not working. And my car's unlocked, my car is behind me. I think I pulled in such an anxious mess that I parked it diagonally and just jumped out because there was nobody else here, and quickly went to plug it in and started freaking out.
And it wasn't working.
It wasn't working.
But today it is.
Yes,
thankfully.
Which is great.
Things to think about. I wouldn't have even thought about a light up there in the day, because unless you haven't experienced it at night, how are you going to know?
Yeah, so we're highlighting the difference between the day and the night inspections as well to all the charge point network operators who can share that information with the retail landlords. In this case, it would be Lidl. It would be a case of Pod Point being able to say to Lidl, this isn't good enough. You need to do something because we're going to start losing customers and people won't want to charge their EV here at night. It should be a facility that is available to people any time of the day.
I reached out to PodPoint to find out what they're doing to ensure they're building safer charge facilities. They said, at PodPoint, we acknowledge that more needs to be done to ensure everyone feels safe wherever and whenever they charge. There are a number of factors our ChargePoint hosts who own the chargers have to consider. Due diligence around lighting, accessibility, convenience, and security camera requirements must be undertaken in order to improve the overall experience of charging. And we are always looking for ways to improve our offering. But the question is, who is policing this? Because at the moment, it doesn't really feel like anybody is. And the infrastructure isn't the only hurdle. There's a troubling issue with extortionate pre-authorization payments.
Pre-auth is actually really important. We've recently learned that one of the major networks actually charges £30 for a pre-authorization, and if the charge fails to initialize, they will take up to 30 days to give you that money back.
That's a lot of money. £30 just to get set up and running with a charge.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't even work, what happens to your money?
If you do that 5 times in a month, that's £150 that you've just invested into that network operator, because they're going to get all of the interest on that money in their bank account, but they're not going to pay you interest for holding on to it.
Not everyone who owns an electric car is rolling in cash. More and more businesses are jumping on the vast incentives and tax breaks available with company EVs, resulting in more average salary EV owners. And whilst the lack of lighting, CCTV and reliability of charge points has got us talking, there's an even bigger issue happening right in front of our eyes that not everybody is savvy to.
While safety is obviously extremely important, accessibility is actually a much bigger issue that affects a huge amount of people who, just want to be able to charge their car when they're out and about.
To date, there are just over 14 million people in the UK who live with a disability. That's 1 in 5. That's a huge section of our society, yet we are failing to provide equal access. It's estimated that by 2035, up to 1.35 million drivers or passengers with a disability in the UK will be partially or wholly reliant on public charging infrastructure, which hasn't been adequately designed with their needs in mind. Motability has been at the forefront of driving change, working hard to ensure an inclusive charger network.
Our accessibility inspections are being led by the recently published measurements from Motability. So they've just released a draft saying, these are the things that you should consider when installing charge points. And I'm not very well placed to be an ambassador for people who have accessibility needs. So we got in touch with a wonderful man called John, aka Billy McBeardface, who has come on board as our accessibility ambassador just to make sure that we are representing those in the best way possible.
Well, I came into the picture because most people know me through Twitter in terms of the EV community. And as part of that, I've been sort of trying to champion getting EV chargers more accessible, because there are so many that people can't get anywhere near if they've got any sort of walking disability or if they're in a wheelchair. Up until late 2012, I was pretty fit, able-bodied. I'd had arthritis for about 20 years by then, and in the last 3 or 4 months of 2012, everything just went downhill. For somebody with mobility issues, there are a lot of things that can get in the way that we don't think about. So lots of chargers have been put up on curbs or up on plinths. So if you're in a wheelchair, or even if you have walking issues, those plinths are so high that you could have a problem stepping up onto them. If you're in a wheelchair, you've got absolutely no chance of being on the ground, reaching the holster with the charging cable, or getting to the keypad or the screen.
Last time I visited here, none of this gridding was on the floor, something that has been put down since, which I do believe helps with accessibility.
One of the things with having gravel down, if it's not in grid sections like this, it can move about. So if you're in a wheelchair, or even if you're using a walking stick, you could become bogged down, so the wheelchair doesn't move as easily. Somebody like me could put their stick in it and get stuck and they end up falling over. So it is quite important that they've actually done something about the gravel surface here.
Curbs, gravel, raised chargers, all things somebody who hasn't got a disability wouldn't think twice about. However, it's that ignorance in the industry that has let so many unfit for purpose chargers be installed across the country, leaving so many EV owners with disabilities to feel unsafe day and night when approaching an unknown charge point. And that's why we need impartial rating systems such as ChargeSafe and organisations like Motability to fight for the right infrastructure. It was so great meeting Kate and John and hearing about all their hard work. A lot of stuff is going on behind the scenes currently, and I can't wait to see it all come to fruition. And it really just does prove a point that not only do we need to be expanding these charging points as quickly as we can, but we also need to make sure that we are making them accessible for everybody. EV ownership is only set to grow, and whilst it's true that the vast majority of EV charging does happen at home, when we do venture further afield, we must have a safe and accessible public charging network that caters to everybody's needs, for both new chargers and those already in place. It really doesn't seem like much to ask, does it?